like to give you a little warning.
Oh, okay. A
All right.
little one.
Excited.
You know the one, right?
Warning.
Okay. Where do we start? I want to start.
Yeah, that's true.
Where do we start? Last week, we weren't here. Let me start with this infamous topic. Are there any questions? Yes, are there any questions?
Aside from
Whatever, it doesn't matter.
okay.
You have to do it with your third eye.
What is it, Janine?
No, I was laughing at what Richard said.
Oh, I thought you said, I thought you had a question other than
Other than
what we
what?
talked about.
No, I know we're going to talk about the flood. I mean, I don't have any
The
specific
flood?
questions. Yeah.
We tried to get, apparently the ark tried to launch itself and it didn't quite work.
No,
It wasn't time yet,
No,
Richard.
I guess we should have named it the Ark.
You
It
know
was
why
trying
it's
to go with the water.
the reason the ark
It is called the Ark
is
for that
because it
reason.
had no-
Yeah.
For
didn't
safety.
have the animals on it. The two, it had
I
gotten
saw a lot of spiders. I know, I think it stopped because it didn't have a bottom.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. The bottom state.
You gotta have a hole.
You didn't build it with a hole?
I think that, I think that, you know, Janice talking about other than flood, but I think realistically that most of us, if not all of us, pretty much have a grasp, you know, of what's happening. And maybe the discussion of it for those who listen in later, who we are unaware of. Nothing on earth happens without reason, and neither does it have value. Everything has a purpose, and as I have been reminded 6,001 times, one of the things I said when the Pope left was, do not be dismayed when catastrophic events take place. Flee to the mountain, and which means to a place of enlightenment, of understanding, from seeing through the third eye as opposed to the eyes. And the question, I suppose, is, was this the event? I think it is, but I have no clue. I had no clue, rather, as to the nature of it. And this is a classic example of when I talk about not trying to shape things and not trying to anticipate how things are going to be or what they're going to be, but just let them be what they are. I also believe that it happened the way it did because there are those in the earth who are very sensitive to the signs of the time, but to the events that are taking place, even though we may sometimes not see it at that moment, but the desire is what creates the sensitivity to see. And the last time that we met, we talked about the birthing of something, and we talked about the seed being placed in the other world, and we talked about righteousness being birthed in the earth. Well, when we look at the nature of what happened last week, there were calls because the flooding was supposed to take place in Spymark, after Rock Hill, Greenville, etc. The whole upstate was supposed to be flooded as well, inundated with the same amount of rain as Columbia was. And in my discussions with some people, my response to them was that when they asked about it, is that it's not going to happen. It's good, it's gonna happen in Columbia, but it's not gonna happen in upstate. And I didn't understand the why behind it, but that's what I felt, that it was not gonna happen. And if you looked at the weather maps, and I'm sure most of us did, you will see that the anticipated rainfall was through the upstate because they were talking about canceling the game in Clemson, remember? But what happened is like it opened up like a V. It went up to Charlotte and down to the lower end of Greenville. But in between that, it was clear. And from Newberry down, that's where the most rain was. Actually from Greenwood down, really. So the question is, why?
The other thing I found that was just so fascinating was
in mind that it does not take every single human, every single person, every single human to understand that that it is Adam and Adam doesn't know who it is. It simply takes one. And we certainly have more than one. It's the one where you save the city. My foundation, my basis for that is if you look at what happened after Jesus left the earth, if you look at what happened, you see that it wasn't long before the true power, understanding of what is called Christianity was usurped and manipulated. If you look at what happened when Muhammad left the earth, you will see that it wasn't long before Islam, the power, the understanding of Islam was usurped and manipulated. Same thing. And when you look at Judaism, it is very, very difficult to get Judaism beyond being a philosophy as opposed to a spiritual journey. Because the way Judaism is manipulated and discussed now, it has become a philosophy as opposed to a spiritual journey. In the philosophy of Judaism is that when it comes to certain sectors of the world, all you have to do is lay claim to being a Jew and you're in charge. And all the powers of the world back you. The superpowers back you because of who you say you are. And if you also look at it, you will see that the direction of religion is digging itself a deeper trench, a deeper hole, as opposed to trying to climb out of the hole by virtue of taking another look at itself. Because when we look at the Shiites, when we look at the Sunnis, we see denominations. That's all it is. They're just different denominations in Islam, just like there are different denominations in Christianity. And then when you listen at some of the people who profess to understand the scriptures or to be guiding people along this journey, when you listen at them, you hear a huge amount of ignorance. Case in point, at a funeral, and listened at this man talk about you need to call on Jesus. You call Buddha, he can't answer you. That's pure ignorance. To listen to someone talk about how good Jesus is and Christianity is the way that men should go, and in the same breath began talking about how mean the people in the church are to each other. So you can't have this goodness, but yet talk about how cold, mean, and mean people are to each other, and how they need to learn the compassion that Jesus had. Well, if you say that you are a Christian, then you are saying that you understand those things that Jesus taught. But yet, the ignorance of it all leads them to deal with a negative approach to spiritual things as opposed to a searching or a hunger to understand these things. So we are at a crossroads, or we were at a crossroads. I don't think we're there anymore. I think that we have made a decision not to turn right or to turn left, but to keep straight ahead, to keep pushing through, even though we don't know what's ahead. I also believe that the nature of of mankind does not change, and the and the religious antics of man, they do not change unless people are pushed in a corner. And we ask, why must these things happen? But if there are no catastrophic events, there's no thought about who we are. People don't begin to seek a deeper understanding unless something happens to them. It's like the kid who washed up on the shore, and we've talked about that. When that happened, all of a sudden, everyone began talking about accepting the refugees into their countries. So these catastrophic things must take place, and the highlight, the thing that I believe we have not noticed, maybe some of us have, but at large, I don't think it's been paid much attention to, and that is with the amount of water that fell, had the upstate flooded, not one dam would have held in Columbia.
That's true.
Not one, if the upstate had flooded. And I remember from when Clark went to school over at Dutch Falk. When she went to school at Dutch Falk, they told them if the dams at Lake Murray were to rupture, they had 7 minutes. So can you imagine if the upstate had gotten 24 inches of rain, as did Columbia? So I think that's one of the things that's missing when it was said that we were to get 10 to 15 inches of rain. If we had gotten 10 to 15 inches of rain, not one dam in Columbia would have held. They would not have had enough time, neither do they have the equipment to stem the flow of the water that would have been coming. So those are the things, that's one of the things I think that we're missing in this, that even though the mikvah has taken place, mercy also prevailed. If but one man will use that spare the city. And the cry was that this cannot happen because all the water has to go to the ocean. And the other thing is that Columbia is worse than Charleston in terms of the flooding. You know,
Strange.
But Columbia's worse. Then I was listening to the news this morning as we were preparing to leave, and one of the things it said was the only transportation in Georgetown now is a boat. So when we look at these places, these events that take place in UI 77, and you see that where there was land, a week ago, is now a lake, and you also look at not only just the dams, but can you imagine what would have taken place had all of that water come from the upstate into Columbia and the treatment plant on 77 rupture? Because those are the things, that's what we're looking at. That
It was underwater, isn't it?
part of it was, and some of it still is.
Big lake
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah, so there's a lake up there. But can you imagine what would have happened if it had been completely overrun with water? This is the mercy that's involved here. And the question is, how do we continue how do we continue to what? How do we continue the flow of mercy? And I believe the way we do that is by recognizing what is having a genuine desire to understand the ramifications of what's taking place from a spiritual perspective, and being very careful on how we order things in relationship to what's happening, as opposed to complaining or seeing it from a negative perspective, we should begin to speak of it as a necessary event in order to bring about change in the thought processes of mankind. And if you can't do that, just don't say anything. Because words are just that powerful. And we have to be cognizant of that. I called George yesterday evening. George, I called him and said to him, asked him if he was aware that they were predicting tornadoes in the area where he lives. And he wasn't, but he told me he had to get off the phone because he had to handle his business and take care of this. These are the kinds of things that I'm talking about, that we have to remain cognizant of so we can deal with them. Can you imagine what would have happened if we had not pushed the hurricane out to sea? It's all of the things that were averted. The question is, why were they averted? Because there are righteous people seeking light. I said earlier, prior to our broadcast, I guess, I said earlier that there have been a huge number of people who call me, and not just from South Carolina, asking me how are the people in Columbia, because they know the connections. And each time I've had to tell them that none of the people in Columbia from Salvation were flooded, and none of the people that that I'm connected with were flooded. So, and it's like, for real? Yeah, it's for real. And it's almost like they think it's a coincidence. No, it's not coincidental. It's real.
And we live in some of the areas that were affected.
Absolutely.
Fairly heavily.
Absolutely. And averted it. Why? Why did it not come? And 10,000 shall fall at your feet, and it shall not come nigh unto thee. The scriptures mean something. The scriptures mean something. So the something that they mean is not, and I'm going to go out on a limb with this. The scriptures mean something, but they do not mean that we are supposed to use them in a business arrangement and call it Christianity. Preaching on Sunday morning, the way preaching has never been the way of the scriptures or to understand it. As a matter of fact, there's more damage done through preaching than anything else, because what's being preached is false. It's a falsehood. It's a lie. It's a lack of understanding. That's what's being preached. Because you're not going to tell me that you will continue to go to a doctor if he keep telling you the same thing and you keep suffering with the same symptoms. And nothing. But you keep going to the altar. And you keep saying these things with no answers. And every time you ask a question, all you get is that, well, some things were not meant for us to understand. Or that's the work of the Lord. That's in God's hands. These kinds of things, as opposed to explain to me why the reason that he said we ought to dominate the earth. If everything is in the Lord's hands, what's in ours? Is there anything in ours? You know, and to say that it's in the Lord's hands is just another way of saying that is under the authority of the Lord. So what's under our authority? Why do we exist the way we do in terms of as a result of the breath of life or the Spirit being blown into us? Why is it that that we cannot see the Adamic essence of our being. If we continue to look in the mirror and see a human instead of closing our eyes and seeing Elohim, we will never change. We will never get beyond what we see in this earthly realm, and our experiences will always be the same. So we cannot keep doing the same thing the same way and expect something different. And the idea of the preaching changing things is so impotent until it becomes nauseating.
Well, the other thing that strikes me is that, I mean, hardly anybody can open their mouths now without saying something about God or it's in the Lord's hands or whatever. I mean, it's almost as if they've made it mundane, powerless.
Yes.
And people didn't used to do that anymore.
No.
Before, they had reverence.
They used to, right, that's the thing.
They don't have it anymore. It's like,
It's a bumper sticker.
yeah.
And it used to be, you know, you're younger and you be talking and you be playing house or something and you use God's name or Jesus' name, and they say you don't play with the Lord's name.
Right,
That kind of thing.
right.
Even though they might not be able to explain it all to us, they knew that something wasn't right about that. But now, it's, as you say, mundane. It's just a slogan now. It has no meaning whatsoever. But,
Well, I mean, what I mean to say is they've made God powerless, and if they don't see themselves, or even if they do,
they probably.
then they feel.
This is in the Lord's hand because they don't have any hope any place else. And that the God's hand is under your authority. We have opportunity to change these things. It's my contention that it will not. This rain does now. It's not going to be a catastrophic event. It's simply going to pass away. It's not going to happen. The people have been brought to a place where they've stopped moving. And what I mean by that is they're not pursuing things right now. They are open they're open to receive from the macro like never before. The things that are put in the macro are able to penetrate them, even understand what they say or feel or experience. I think they're most acceptable to that now. Because their lives have been brought to a halt. And there is nothing to bring your life to a halt like the destruction of the thing. And the things that I see that most people reference are the things that they're doing. I hear more people talking about property damage and loss of life. I see people now who are saying, we got out just in time, life can be replaced, but my life can't, those kinds of things. So it's like they came to a standstill, they're at a halt. So we have an opportunity increase our desire for that reception, for that infusion from the macro, so that we can continue to continue this journey of bringing mankind to a place of unicity, of oneness. Because when we look at different parts of the world, things happening, bringing people's lives. I mean, it's changing people's lives rapidly. And that's happening in different parts of the world. In this country, it just happens to be this place. Let me show you how important South Carolina is. There's going to be Democratic University. Have you heard of that? It's going to be a Democrat for Winthrop University. Hillary, Bernie Sanders.
This Tuesday at 8.
Yeah, 10. They say the 10.
They said 10.
10, huh?
No, Tuesday at 8.
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock. 8 o'clock.
Yes.
This is MSNBC. This is the thing. It's not just the South Carolina. The slave states came together and decided to do it in South Carolina. It's Virginia, West Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Arkansas, Kentucky, Georgia, Alabama, Louisiana, and Texas. Do you think that's ironic?
West Virginia was not a
Right,
but most of
but most of them are. But you understand what I'm saying here? And yet the exception being West
And they
Virginia.
picked South Carolina.
And they chose South Carolina. Why? It's not even centrally located when when you look at those states. So why did they choose South Carolina?
They're not at the beach.
No. I mean, it's nothing. You're right.
It's the same.
It's not. You're right. It's not like a resort. There, Rock Hill. Rock Hill.
Golfing or something.
And they're not the best.
Hazard.
I played them. Most of them are not even enough to talk about.
Where's
But
it going to be held?
in Rock Hill,
In Rock Hill?
yeah. I mean, think about that. Why?
That's amazing.
I have been saying for many years that the capital of the Confederacy was in Richmond on paper only. The capital of the Confederacy was South Carolina.
Really?
In reality, the people from South Carolina made, who you think drafted the first papers of secession?
Yeah.
South Carolina. Who you think initiated the formation of the Confederate States? South Carolina.
It's John C. Calhoun and all them that brought it to a head in the first.
South Carolina.
Then we created the Daughters of Confederate.
South Carolina.
South Carolina.
So this, so when I say it was the Richmond, Virginia on paper, I mean that. Columbia, South Carolina was the capital in reality. And the funny thing about it, if you look at the history, when Sherman came, he was on his way to burn Union. Because he could get across. Now, when I say to burn Union, he didn't do the burning. They burned, Union would have burned because of at the hands of the Confederate or those slave owners. That's who did the burning. They burned Sherman and his soldiers. They tried to starve Sherman and his soldiers. But what happened, there were many of the and some of the white people who fed Sherman's army in spite of them burning the fields, trying to starve them. Because In Atlanta, they took the railroad tracks so they could not use the trains. They burned the train cars. The stuff that we were told in history, you know, most of it's not true anyway.
Mhm.
So South Carolina plays a pivotal role in everything that happens in this nation. And when we take that into consideration and see what is taking place and see in terms of our desire to understand, I think we can more clearly see, if we look at it through the third eye, the rage and battle that's taking place in the other world between the forces of confusion and the forces of order. Does that make sense to you? And I was looking at some of the words in the New Testament and some of the words in the Old Testament. And Lincoln, when he talks about you must be baptized by the water and the Spirit. The word water is the same word in Aramaic that's used for water when it talks about and the waters covered the deep. So it is talking about the same thing that the waters talk about, the churning of the Spirit. And when it talks about and talked about what was that and the doctor and the light something and the doctors perceived it not. In John's first chapter, that word light is the same word that's used for light in separating the light from the darkness. The same word for darkness is used also, even though there are several different words translated as darkness in the Aramaic and the Hebrew, but these words specifically are the same. So what I'm saying is that there is a bridge between the two. And if there is a bridge between the two, then we cannot accept the idea that has been presented to us that Christianity is separate from Judaism and Judaism is separate from Christianity. I'm saying neither one of them exists in the sense of the spiritual. I'm saying that there is a continuous flow, but it has been impeded. The flow has been, there have been attempts to impede the flow, and the attempts to impede the flow was done by of the Jews saying Jesus was not who he say he is, and I don't say who the church now, because he wasn't who the church is, who he say he is, and the Christians saying that the Jews killed Jesus. That those things are there to create a conflict, a sense of confusion that does not allow for a smooth flow of spiritual essence in this earth. And we have to be the lightning rods or the conduits for this spiritual flow. And that's, I believe that is the reason we're being shown things in the scripture that's out of order in terms of some of the stuff we talked about and the stuff we looked at in Leviticus and Deuteronomy, those kinds of things, those laws that makes absolutely no sense, and they're not congruent with the Ten Commandments. So I believe that we are understand what they're experiencing. And I also believe that it is no coincidence that is happening in South Carolina.
So you're saying that these dams of ignorance have to be broken so that the flow of enlightenment is unimpeded. One has a what do you say, a monopoly on
Right.
defining it the way that
Absolutely. Now, say that again, take all about.
the dams of ignorance. As you talked about, I thought about how everything comes from the same river, but each little community that surrounds a tributary of that river names itself,
Yeah.
whatever its name is, yet it comes from that same river. And so what we created in religion are dams that impede the flow. Once we capture our little bit of quote-unquote enlightenment
Mm-hmm.
or the river, we put a dam there to block from continuing to flow as it should. So these dams of ignorance have
Yeah, this
attempted to, I didn't
The
say
dams
that
of
way,
I'm
but you
sorry,
can
the
to
when you
have,
look at-
have attempted to impede the flow of
Yes.
enlightenment is what I used.
Look at the rivers. When you look at Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, Christianism are flowing tributaries. And each one of the tributaries has been dammed up, so that it does not remain separate as opposed to being what it's supposed to be, with the exception of the Sufi, the sage, the shamans go beyond the dams and pool their essence because they truly see beyond what's being impeded, and are able to bring that to the earth. But at the same time, what has been taking place, they have been harboring it as opposed to speaking it, as opposed to teaching it. It's been only the initiated, when it is intended for everyone to experience.
So that would be creating those man-made lakes and ponds,
Yes.
so you can have your own little aspect of what you think it ought to be.
Right, and that's an excellent example, Barbara, of what's transpiring, and it's up to us to understand and accept the responsibility that's on our shoulders. And I often say this: there are those who say, "Why you?" and I say, "Why not?" And I've even asked myself, "Are you kidding me? What makes you think that you have that kind of spiritual influence?" And the answer is, well, if someone else was doing it, I'd be one. I'd be like, why can't I do that? I believe. So it doesn't, someone has to accept the responsibility. You don't have to take the responsibility. You have to accept it because it's being offered. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You have to accept the responsibility. And if the epicenter of South Carolina for the confusion in the nation, thus the world, then the epicenter for order is also in South Carolina. And I use the word confusion because I don't want us to drift into an arena of seeing things as a negative, but seeing things as an opportunity. In Texas, the books, McGraw-Hill, forced immigration as opposed to slavery. Laborers were brought into this country as opposed to slaves were brought into this country. The sanitizing, the attempts to sanitize history is also an opportunity to keep people at odds with each other, arguing about what should have been in the book as opposed to saying this is the reality of it. So what happens is that you have this group of black folk mad at this group of white people because of what they put in the book, as opposed to saying, realizing that this is a distraction, and we deal with the reality of it, but at the same time, you don't deal with it from a foundation of anger or hatred. You deal with it from the basis of truth, and that's a difference. And then listening that people deal with it, I can hear the difference. I can hear the anger. I can hear the negative attitude that's behind the arguments about it, as opposed to the truth being put forth from a basis of enlightenment and truth, a realization that all of us are one. I can hear that.
Yeah, I mean, I have to teach history like that about slavery and whatever. But what's written in the textbook, even though there's a little bit of basis in truth, it doesn't give the real reality of it. So kids are like, well, if I was a slave, I would have run away. And I'm like, are you sure? Because if they caught you, you would have got your foot chopped off. Or, you know, or they should have where they got on their little clean dresses and clean rag around the head, and you know, they run across the freedom. I'm like, no. If you were in South Carolina, that was too far to go. You didn't follow the.
Yeah.
You know, you either went to Florida. Sure. So, I mean, nothing in the textbook really gives the reality.
Yeah.
So kids get this. I can see how they think they were just workers.
Right. Absolutely.
Because there's nothing in reality that they really, unless somebody tells them.
And the other part of that is that we cannot lie until we lose sight of what we're about. We cannot allow that contradiction to become a permanent distraction. Does that make sense? We can't allow that contradiction to come up, because if it becomes a permanent distraction, then we're right back where we started from. Everybody in their own camp, fighting each other again, and you never get to a place where you breach the dams so that the flow can be continuous. So, are there any questions or comments?
Well, one of the things that I thought about this week was what you just said about how we need events to get us out of our norm. I remember we were talking several years ago, about how things need to be different. You know, you need to take a different route to work to get your automatic ego off of well, this week, I would go to work. John would have to scout out a way to work first. I would take that route into work, and by the time that I would be ready to come home, it's closed. And so I would have to get the message of, okay, where's the next route? And that happened every single day. And so that got me out of my comfort zone in a sense. But I was thinking about how water being halfway up your home, you know, if that kind of thing got me a little off center, how that really got their attention. Because having to do this every day was a little stressful in and of itself. If I dwelled on it.
Right.
But it did do this. It kept me thinking. It kept me open. Okay, I wonder where I'm going to go, which route I'm going to take. So that, it did do that. So I'm just wondering, for people who really got knocked out of their quote, really, I'm like you, that there is that opportunity, because what they trust, and I trusted that I would have a house when I came back. I didn't have a house. It has shifted a little bit, and so that shift there, it is the opportunity for enlightenment of sorts. It's an opportunity to go that we are a brother's keeper in a sense. There are lots of that this has brought to. What happened? I just passed by on Lower Richland on Air Base Road, and we see the railroad track bridge a gap with nothing underneath.
Yeah.
Absolutely no dirt.
Yeah.
Absolutely no, and that's structure. So I guess the thing I was thinking about is that when something happens, it does not affect just one area. It affects, intertwines and affects the other.
Right.
Infrastructure is affected. Thank God sometimes, in some ways.
Yeah.
The military is not doing business as usual because they're out supporting the community. On the canal, when they had that problem with chunk falling into the canal that they were trying to save, and here were these major electric wires and systems be cut off, which would significantly affect. So it's not. To see that we are not in isolation of each other or of systems. Everything works together, and for good reason.
Yes. And it's no coincidence that your house became
Oh yeah.
because of the generator. That's not.
Well, neither is having Barbara routed around in different places either. They're probably being exposed to your energy maybe for the first time, or you know, not normally a traveling path.
She go here this morning.
Yeah, even yeah. Just coming out to your house. I'd never been back in there. I thought, my word.
But I showed you the fountain.
Even she was like, it's been 20, 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
No, it's just a thing of how quickly you're in the rural part of the state.
But hasn't it gotten you off your beaten path? Beaten path is a straight shot through, but you have to go through neighborhoods that you never saw before. Things that you never saw before. Everything is not really the nice neighborhoods of Lake Catherine
Yeah.
anymore.
Well, actually, what did impress me with that, in that sense, I maybe feel a little bit guilty or lucky, because my roots, which are basically simple, routine, my roots are there. They're there. Pretty much get through this. But I did use the, I guess it is, route to go up the back way to Trader Joe's. And I actually did it coming back, and I was amazed, overwhelmed at how jam-packed those roads were with people. People's houses they didn't know, ones who were looting,
Yeah.
you know, to help. So all of that oneness showed. You know, this is an opportunity. You then look to what? To each other, leadership, to say, now how are we going to, you know, you can have a governor who says we won't be the same, we'll be better. What do you mean? Do you really have a plan? Or you're going to leave it today anyway? And how long does that, how is it? And it's always in little ways you don't see that the other stuff starts to come back. Just like me, I got my routines, I can sort of ignore them. Because there's a big part of this town you can still and not really see any of this stuff. That's what that amazed me
And
too.
the other thing too is that
Just by being out there looking.
you gotta knock down with all that thought of the Lake Catherine area and forget about the Lower Richland area. Forget about the 94-year-old who was in his house for 4 days before anybody ever got to him. I mean, those kinds of things, we can put our energies, we can recreate what just got. discombobulated by channeling our thought and our energy only in one area, rather than using this as an opportunity to step back, look at the whole. And that's what I don't want to happen.
We determine what it looks like. Only thing she had to do as the authority was open the door. Our desires, we cannot paint the picture. Our desires of what better looks like is not the political norm. Our desires of what better looks like comes from the other side. It's impacted by the spiritual. It is so strongly impacted until it becomes evident that it's not just the hand of the human who's doing this. And the better in South Carolina will be seen before seen any place else. The better looks like, I have no, as I didn't have an idea of what the catastrophic event was going to look like. But I am telling you that the better seen and be so evident until it will be undeniable. And in South Carolina and grow exponentially. That the better will not be sure that those in the Catherine are taken care of and those in or the forgotten. The better has nothing to do, but it has to do with being our brother's keeper, a hedge around our brother. Everything to do with that. So what does it look like to be your brother's keeper? The overt expression of it is, as Richard said, people who don't know people taking stuff out of their home, helping them to clear their house out, or looking at it, the water, the food, all these things have been brought in. The idea that Carolina's at LSU and LSU go give them the proceeds from the gate. Those kinds of things, that's the human better. But we can piggyback on the human better and where it actually comes from. A place in the mind that you think about it, but from a place in the heart that recognizes that that there is no me, but there is a us. You understand what I'm trying to say? So, and I think the better is going to be expressive of that. Sheldon?
Yes, I'm not sure if you got the last email that got Nick sent out.
Yep.
But Joaquin ultimately derived from, I believe that I probably, it's the Hebrew name meaning established by Yahweh. And you recall Bible is very peculiar when Jesus is basically saying that he came to cause hell, to turn things upside down, etc. And to the layman mind, that may seem like things are very destructive and bad, but that's only looking at one side of the coin instead of the entire coin. It's different from the floods that have taken place in many different better words, people's understandings of their cultures is not so much of a destroying, which you could live, but it's always something that is a new. I don't want to say a new beginning, but a cycle. That's not even to say that the bad, that what was left was terrible, but it's just a recreation, like starting off from scratch again. It's no different from when South Carolina is definitely an agriculture. Most of the people are familiar with agriculture there, but when you burn the field, come in constant interaction with that group and you put on the same level, all of a sudden you're more understanding and you're more receptive to see that thing that you this is from meaning the exact same thing. So there's many different things that are taking place, from the third eye with all of
We know.
I have a question. I think the drinking water supply for Columbia is threatened.
What's the source of life? Water.
Congaree.
People think about water, but like they think about breathing, because it's there.
You don't think?
They don't think about it at all, because it's there. But there, all of a sudden it becomes extremely important when it's not there. And it's not just drinking water. It's the water that you use in your bathroom. It's the water that you use to cook. It's just, that's what you think about at that point. But the first thing you think about is drinking. And
It's really attention getting.
it really is. Because the question is, what are if the dam is breached and all the water is contaminated? What's going to happen? How long can you truck water? That for this number
If the dam is breached,
of people,
by what routes are you going to?
So they're
projecting.
by helicopter
They're
necessarily.
going to fly then.
But you
They're
see what I'm talking
projecting
about?
calm, if they're not, and that's what we want. They're
Yeah.
saying-
And those who listened at the news heard an understatement of what was happening. It was highly understated, especially when they were talking about the Beaver Creek Dam.
Yeah.
It was purposeful. People wouldn't panic. See, I don't think that until now we can appreciate the gravity of the power of water. And I don't think that we can appreciate the metaphorical essence of water in its state of expressing its power.
Yeah.
Just like water will move anything it chooses to move, regardless of how large it is or how impenetrable we think it is.
Yeah.
The Spirit is the same way.
Sage, it's interesting you say that because there was an older black man that was on, I think it was Sunday. They interviewed him for a moment. He said, look, you guys, he was referring to families that wouldn't go. And he said, you can not go if you don't want to, but that water will move you before you move it. And I thought that was really kind of interesting for him to just put it that way.
6 inches of water moving at 6 inches of water moving at 6 miles per hour, impact of 500 pounds per square inch. That's a lot. That's nothing to play with. So no matter how large your vehicle is, it can float you. This is the guy. Nothing. I have you there. Nothing impacts our lives quite that way. You could drive on ice because you can take your time, but you will not drive on water if it doesn't desire you to do it, no matter how slow you go.
I think just as a little note, people don't realize, I don't care how big your truck is, this is how much of your tire
It's on the road.
is on the road. That's it, Jack. So anyway.
That in itself, though, really does this marvelous thing as far as changing people's mindset to a mindset of appreciation, and also not being how to say this. It forces you to have an appreciation, number one. Number two, it jars you out of having more so of an arrogance in the lower part, just running and controlling everything. And it makes you more so do what a lot of sages, indigenous people do, et cetera, as far as being more so one with nature and being one. You're not allowed to be as selfish when your individual power is just completely demolished in your mind. You're not able to be by yourself. You're not able to be extremely selfish.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about, as I rode around trying to find my way back home one day, because everything was closed that was open. I was trying to find trying to find my way home, just, going this way and having to reroute again and trying this angle. Anyway, but I was going on Trenum Road, and I saw the places where the people had lakes around their homes, and it was empty. And I thought about how they put that, people who actually live on the lake get so much authority because of the fact that they are near that water. But then all that water is gone now, and they've lost things, but they've lost the water as well. And that seemed to even be more symbolic to me.
Well, that's what you said. Trying to find my way home. That in itself is a metaphor. Listen to Barbara. Trying to find a way to get home. Trying to find a way to get to work. Is this not a journey, finding our way home? Is this not a journey to get us back to where we were supposed to be from the beginning? So there are so many metaphors wrapped up in this, and I dread what's coming tomorrow. There's gonna be so many Noah sermons tomorrow.
Oh my goodness.
I dread that, and to talk to people in this area, and the first thing on their mind was, we couldn't go to church. Like, that's the most important thing. I mean, come on now. Rather than we couldn't go to church, should it not be, well, we're okay, so we're going to see if we can help someone else. But the first thing, you consider that we could go to church, and you hope that your building is not damaged. Are you kidding me? Yeah, that in itself gives you a sense of what the priorities are. And regardless of who you are, the way you establish your priority is reflective of whose leadership you follow. Think about it.
Yep.
The way that you deal with circumstances that you face is reflective of the leadership you follow. And if your first thought is materialistic, then that's the leadership you're following. So show me the connection between that and the scriptures. Because you can't serve God and mammon, which is money or materialism. So I hope that at some point it becomes, well, I don't hope it, I know it. It will become. It will become a message of deliverance from materialism and an acceptance of the spirituality that is necessary for us to bring things back into kilter. I was reading this book, and one of the things that this African shaman said, he said that when he began to recognize what he was hearing from the spiritual realm, the first thing that he understood that he was able to do was control the weather. But not for his personal benefit. It had to be for the benefit of everyone that it affected. And it did not necessarily mean that he was supposed to desire it to rain in dry places. And I thought that was significant, you know? I thought it was very significant that you would think that, and this is how we think as humans, if I could control the weather, then we need to go to California and make it rain. But just maybe that's what they need in order to shock them into reality. They don't have enough water, and we have too much. But both of them serve the same purpose. So again, huh?
And it's not supposed to be them versus us.
No.
Anyway.
And it's not.
We eat their food.
Well, it is not them versus us. It is them experiencing the same thing we're experiencing, but from a different event. And yes, we eat their food, but we won't be eating much of it. Because they don't have the water to grow it as they did in the past. and it's, I think that we should take notice to that if they wanted this water, it's not that it would have brought them out of the drought.
Yes, it would have.
No, it wouldn't. They did the calculation. They said that.
They took it back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I heard what you did too, that 11 trillion gallons of water, something like that. It was 6 to 8 trillion to bring them out. They wanted the water. We want the drought. You know, we want it. We wanted to be out of a drought, but not to this extent. So the farmers in South Carolina are in trouble too.
We'll be back in it in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
You watch.
Because it's under the water, you know. So not only is the water threatened, food, everything is threatened. And keep in mind where we live. We live in a country where whatever is threatened, the price increases, but your salary doesn't. Oh no, they're not going to do it now because it's price gouging during the event. But you can cool believe. Look at gas prices. When oil was a little over $100 a barrel, gas prices went up to like almost $3 in South Carolina, some over $3.
We got up to 5, didn't we?
No, we never got
I
that.
thought 4 and some change. It was over 4.
Okay, let's say 4.
Yeah.
Gas is $46 a barrel. I mean, oil is $46 a barrel now. You don't see that much difference. You understand what I'm saying here?
Yeah.
So there is.
What's the gas? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
What's the gas prices there right now?
Like
50
$2.
cents a gallon.
$1.70, $89, $1.72 in the upstate.
Okay.
$1.90 here.
I was wondering because I noticed the day in Jersey that it was I believe it was like a 150 or something like that up here, and I think it was actually a little cheaper here than there, but only because of the water there.
So you know, I guess my point is
It came
that
out a lot slower and it went up, that's for sure.
that the people are going to more than just by the flood, even after it's over with. That's my point. And it's not just going to be in refurbishing their homes. It's going to be in every aspect of their lives. That's my point. And that's simply because of where we live. So anyway, and I don't want anybody talking to me about, well, we give people in the other countries money, we need to keep that money here. I don't want to hear that. Because how do you go give foreign aid to a country? You say you're giving them foreign aid and you stealing their own. You're taking their resources, you're not giving them anything. Then they have to use by the stuff in this country.
You're not giving them anything.
Yeah, give them
It's
anything.
less than 1. Anyway. And
So-
50% of that still goes to Israel.
The only one you giving anything is Israel. They're the only one.
Was Egypt.
If-
They stopped that now.
If America were to take Israel out of its budget, it would cease to exist. It would cease to exist. Think about it.
Israel would cease to exist?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
The majority of Israel's budget comes from the U.S.
They have to sell their nuclear weapons, you mean?
Back to us?
Yeah.
Probably, because we don't
Yeah.
know who had them.
So anyway, and nobody ever went to jail for selling them that and giving them the technology to do those nuclear weapons, while everybody else went to jail who gave it to people of color. only people that have nuclear weapons. Think about it.
Yeah.
Only people of color are forbidden to have nuclear weapons. It was okay for South Africa to have it until the government changed hands.
Yep.
So that's
That's what Peter was working on.
that's the kind of thing that
Not weapons, but
that we have to
power.
that we are dealing with. Now, bottom line, at some point, we as a group of facilitators are going to have to come together, and I'm not forgetting the overnighter, but we as a group of facilitators are going to have to come together and begin to peer into the other realm and deal with the issues at hand so that balance can be ushered in, putting all of us on the same page. Because we cannot afford to allow our thoughts to be traveling in different directions and resulting in confusion in our midst. We cannot afford that. Well, where we are at this stage is far too important. And I cannot emphasize enough that the only reason I believe the Creator is allowing these catastrophic events is because there is someone in the earth who will hear from the other side and bring balance. There is someone who desires to hear, as it is in scriptures from heaven, to hear the enlightenment. Is there anyone listening? Yes. Therefore, these things take place because there is someone there to stem the flow. I did not understand at the moment when I was speaking with some of the people in the upstate and saying it's not going to flood and we're not going to get that much rain. I did not understand the veracity of that statement until after I looked at the map and saw how it opened up, and I began to understand the reason that could not happen is because of the detriment it would have brought to this area. I didn't know that then. And where did that come from? It did not come from my head. I felt it. I felt that that could not happen. And it had nothing to do with going to church Sunday. It had nothing to do with a football game. It had everything to do with this is not going to happen. That's all I knew. And now, after that, I began to see the reason behind that kind of a statement. So, if there are no comments or questions, I'm done. And so,
Woo-hoo, it's me, Kate.
And so is
I was out of
Joanna.
it this morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Did y'all talk about the mikveh, the birth with the waters? I apologize, I was a little out of it this morning.
we talked about the mikveh, but not the birth and not the embryonic fluid.
Okay. I just didn't know if there were some other thoughts about that.
Jean?
Let's see, part of our conversation related to the mikvah, but part of our conversation related to the water being, in a sense, umbilical fluid, and the sacrifice gotta give so that new life can come forth. And so I think we talked about this in a roundabout way, in the sense that from a spiritual perspective, that this catastrophe, quote unquote, if you call it that, that we will be able to see some enhanced growth in spite of this physical, what looks like a physical catastrophe. And so that's part of the new birth kind of issue we're talking about, so I forgot what else we talked about.
Any questions or comments about this?
What else, Rainier, do you?
Just what was being talked about here. We talked a little bit about the spirituality of South Carolina, and the stuff I found out was the genealogy, how the people with the highest percentage of DNA from Africa are in South Carolina, and that it's like the seed of spirituality, so those birth waters is birthing something spiritual out of into the world, into the U.S., and so that was part of it too.
And that's an extremely important part of it. As you were speaking, I don't know why, but what came to my mind were the fire ants and how they formed the raft.
Oh, those pictures.
Yeah, that's what came to my mind.
What is that?
Where the fire ants secrete an oily substance that sits on top of the water, and they form an island and move the queen and the lava to the top, and they float downstream until they find dry land. And what
cousins
came,
in Africa.
and what came to my mind was that not our cousins in Africa, but we Africans here are floating. We found we secrete a substance of forgiveness that gives us opportunity to rise above the raging waters and form that sense of raft until we find dry land, which is a renewed consciousness. So, into my mind as Randy was talking, and I think that we have done that. We have found this renewed consciousness, and this renewed oh my God, this renewed consciousness is no different than the new heaven, the new earth. The freshness of it all is what we have found, and we did not find it in the book. We found it in us. The book just gave us directions and instigated the search. We found it in us. And when we come together as facilitators, that's how we move. Just like those ants down the stream. In that direction. Just until we can bring things to a safe place for survival. That's who we are. And humanity is dependent on that, even though it doesn't know it. So, anyone else? Oh, okay.
I have one more thing. Something someone wrote, someone who's from Ohio but lives in South Carolina, one of the Facebook things, but they said they were just marveling at South Carolina because here they had the mass shooting in the church, and instead of rioting and looting, they had people holding hands and forgiving, and they said building bridges across, linking hands across bridges, And he was just marveling at that response. And they said, here again, they have a flood, and instead of looting and vandalizing, you've got people helping each other. And, you know, the National Guard there can actually just come and hand out water and not police as much. So they were thank you, son. They're marking on the thank you, BJ. Marking on the response. Thank you for the ball. Of South Carolina, you know, to something that in another part, in almost all the other parts of the country, you know, was divisive, and you know, people started talking about all the things that divided us instead of the things that kept us together.
And therein lies the difference. Therein lies the difference. And there was a time when it would have been different than what it was, than what happened. It would have been different. But I believe because righteous, it was not that way. And it shall not be that way. And Audrey had her hand up.
Well, I don't want to change the...
Okay, go ahead, Rainey or Sheldon, if you come in on this.
Oh yeah, this is what Rainey was saying. I wanted to say as far as the beginning that we're talking about that, and Pastor, you saying talking about things changing in South Carolina first. That is to be for the rest of the country as well. It's just beginning in South Carolina. So it's a new president that is actually being set. It's for the connection of everyone that shared this and everything. So the same way this country was based upon the ideas, a lot of the things that started off in South Carolina, this too, or that too, will permeate through the rest of the country.
And that's what the battle, whatever that is.
I was wondering about them getting involved in the Middle East. How is that all connected?
The whole world is convulsing. The whole world is coming to a state of complete chaos. And Russia is where? In Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And Russia has now created more chaos in the Middle East. And there is nothing the U.S. is going to do about it. Other than make a deal, you shoot these and we shoot these over here. That's the deal they're trying to make now. So it's simply opportunity to bring order even to that. Because Russia, up until this point, in Europe only, and that was in the Ukraine. But now it is extended again into the Middle East. Now tell me which major country in Europe that's not involved in the Middle East? Every major country in Europe is involved in the Middle East and is shooting them. Prior to this, Russia was on the sideline. Of course, they were doing things through back channels, but I'm talking about the overt actions were not there. Until this point, they were on the sideline. But now, every single major country in Europe, of course, kind of America and Canada, are involved in the chaos in the Middle East. So, if that part of the world, not saying the Middle East, but that sector of the world is a place where order emanates, then chaos takes place in order for that to happen again. And the darkness brooded over the deep. The churning of the waters is what the deep is talking about. And the spiritual nature, not just of the Middle East, but of this whole earth now, is being churned. And what happens when the darkness covers the deep? Out of that darkness comes what? Light. So out of that confusion comes light. But the light cannot come out of that confusion unless Elohim recognizes who it is and calls that light out of that darkness. And when that light is not called out of the darkness in terms of light come as much as desiring that order become the, for lack of a better term, the order of the day, to bring that balance. So it was necessary for them to get involved. So, I'm going to say this, if there's nothing else we've done.
No, I have two more.
Oh, okay, okay, I bet you one thing.
Okay.
There won't be a problem accepting infrastructure money now.
Nope.
Well, you
Yeah, it took Haley till her third conference to use Obama's name.
No, that's right.
Wow.
First she said FEMA, then she said the Office of the President, then she said President Obama. I thought, boy, she must have just.
Well, actually, it's because she has national aspirations.
Right.
And she saw what happened to Christie.
Mm-hmm.
So, go ahead, Raymond.
One of the things was, it's amazing to me that the waters out of the ark went and washed away Tony's.
Say what, dear?
what?
The waters from the ark that went through the ark went and washed through Tony's juice gate.
Oh, she can't play softball down there anymore.
I know. I don't know how damage, but it looks like it might have been bad. And then the other was, I was telling someone I was very thankful for the amount of connectivity we have nowadays, because I'm very far away, but I could stay in touch with Mom and Dad daily. I could get updates on road closures from Jared on Facebook, so I didn't feel the same.
Yeah.
I didn't feel as if this was something that happened far away, and I didn't feel panicked about it, or, any number of things. If we were where we were before with, the landlines are gone and you just have no contact. So I was thankful for that.
And you're not in the same place you were spiritually either, are you?
That's true. I'm not. That's true.
I went to scdot.com, scdot.org, and I was looking for road, and I wanted to come, but some people weren't gonna let me come. They called me crazy because I felt like I didn't want to look at the flood. I wanted to be here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I wanted the presence here.
No, we didn't want to look at it, and we live here.
Yeah.
That wasn't true.
So that was not my reasoning.
No, but
Yeah.
I didn't want to be here to be a gawker.
No, I know. Yeah.
I wanted to be here because I felt like the energy needed to be added to the mix. And obviously it wasn't, because it wasn't. But it's like, will you just sit down and let other people handle something? Then that's what I got from that. So.
actually, that's what I felt driving through the Lake Road the other day.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many people here, even at Lower Richland. There's so many people here.
Mm-hmm.
So you can still feel a connection and use whatever words you want to, but you don't have to always physically be there.
Yeah.
Because you're bumping into each
Yeah.
other. And,
Yeah.
But one thing is, some people have been asking, writing me emails and stuff. That's my generation. At least those are the only ones I acknowledge. If you're doing anything on Facebook with me, But who live up in New England, some folks down in Mexico, not yet. Well, anyway, people, what's happened? Because the way other people understand this is so small and so simple. You had, what's his name from NBC News come down, get out of his 4-star hotel, go stand in front of something, do 2 minutes and then leave. And I thought, really? And I couldn't believe there wasn't somebody off camera going, that's it?
Yeah.
All right, but I took the time, and then actually it was helpful to me to just start writing, almost like a diary, because people haven't a clue Just like you might not really have a clue about what all that snow really did up in New England unless people start telling you how it changes the way they live. And then you can connect to it.
Right. And I think that
And it may eventually come out in some special,
it
but
it helped with me. After experiencing Hugo and taking an active part in helping people put their lives back together in Charleston and seeing it firsthand prior to any cleanup. As soon as they opened the way for us to go, we were there. And I had some sense of what people were experiencing and a genuine desire to reach out to that. Let me share this with you about my Hugo experience. When Hugo hit, we were, shortly after that, we were in association. And during that period, I was one of the accepted people in that association. So having permission to speak to the group, the words out of my mouth were, I would appreciate it if you would bring, and I went down a list of stuff so that we can, because we're going to Charleston and we can help. The moderator says, we're not going to do that. We just send a check. So I said, okay, you don't have to, but Mount Calvary, we're going to do it. So when he found out that 6 of us on the bus, but the bus was full, because everybody brought their stuff to us. And the underside of the bus and the inside of the bus was packed. We took it to McKinley, Washington station where he was distributing stuff. And the next thing I knew when we got back is that the moderator was doing the same thing. But it did not have the same impact. Why? Because the people still needed it. Because it was not being done because you cared. It was being done because you wanted to be seen. That in itself makes all the difference in the world. My Hugo experience taught me a lot about what the impact of caring has in terms of drawing people to you who also care. And though the people were not there, they really were. We were cutting a tree off for from someone's house, and I had gotten into a bed of fire ants. That was the last thing we did, and I didn't realize it until my legs were swollen. And on the way back, I felt dizzy. They were talking about taking me to the hospital when we got to Columbia, and I said, no, I got this. So I go to the back of the bus, and I go into where I go. And I guess in a few minutes, because before we got to Columbia, my legs were down, there were no red spots on my leg, I was done. And that also taught me how powerful positive energy is. And I didn't call it energy then, of course. I called it self-healing. But now that I understand the power of that. So during this period, you may not be able to physically bring a mattress out of someone's house or give someone a bottle of water, but your life energy can do far more than that if that is your desire. To experience that connection that Richard was talking about, but in experiencing it in a way that it touches your heart, not in a way that you are curious or not in an academic way. So I'm done. If there are no questions, or Audrey.
I have one question and one comment. I don't know how this is connected.
You don't get one or the other.
I don't know how this is connected, but I feel like it is. I was in my class, well, we didn't have class last week, but the week before I was in my class, and we had read a couple of articles about Black English and how it is indeed a language, a vernacular. And we were having this discussion, and I'm the only black person in the class. And then somehow we got onto this thing where one of the other women, it's all women, one of the other women brought up the fact that, well, they've been taking these courses about social justice and how they need to be aware of the differences in culture and blah, 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 blah. And they started talking about how they felt so guilty about being white, a white teacher in a school with black kids, or in a class with just black kids, or mostly black kids, how they felt so guilty and blah, 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 blah. And it just occurred to me, and I said to them, well, you feel guilty because you're a compassionate person. And it's just something you have to go through to get to the other side so that you can, and if you didn't feel guilty, then, you know, nothing would change. So, and I think I kind of redeemed them because their guilt could have gone to a negative place. So I was glad I was there to be able to say that to them so that they could get past that and to move on and be a positive force. Anyway, I don't know how, but I see it like the flood of attitude and whatever. And then the second thing is somebody commented on Facebook that we had a mini Katrina and we were experiencing the same thing that they experienced in New Orleans. And I kind of want to know how that, and it resonated with me, so I kind of want to know how that connects spiritually.
Train of thought.
While you're getting your train of thought, I'm back on track. Don't go over that one though that would have the sand. The thing that I,
You know,
the thing I thought about when you said that was what we heard most about is how it affects people in fairly affluent areas. And Katrina, it affected people in affluent areas, but it affected a lot of folk who were not affluent. And so it was like, sort of like the teacher kind of talked about, that perhaps going through this and feeling that disconnection from material things will allow folk who are more affluent to perceive that, yeah, I'm getting something, and from a spiritual perspective, I ought to be at a spot where I can be more giving and for giving too. It's the only thing I can pick up, because I mean, it put, like Children said, the water kind of puts you on the same level in a sense, in terms of if you were tied to something physical, well, it just ripped that away.
But I did notice, just a little bit related to that, I think it was today, Saturday. Thursday was the first time I really heard, at least we were watching Channel 10, they out of those neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And people, and there was some marvelous things people were doing, initiative and caring, that weren't getting any.
That's because they had to do it because there was nobody, no publicity.
But I mean, you know, here they set up the distribution center at Lower Richmond. Well, this lady was running around neighborhoods with a huge truck full of the same stuff. She was going to where she knew people would be who couldn't get there.
Right.
And no one was talking about that.
Yeah.
Until I guess they were running out of topics and they just started going farther afield. But it doesn't matter, because that brought it to the light a little bit. You understood, wait. And that created in me anyway a whole new sense of understanding, broadened the sense of what's the word, concern and involvement of people in this, and then what to do to be more responsive.
Well,
so, you know, that's how these things go sometimes. The question is whether they get there.
Restoration is going to be different in South Carolina than I'm saying it's going, I'm not speculating. It's going to be different.
Oh, okay.
It's going to be different in that in New Orleans, the poor people are forgotten. during the restoration. That's not going to happen in South Carolina. People are going to be restored in South Carolina. And that in itself is going to be expressive of what's taking place in the other realm. Again,
Right,
I'm not.
an entirely different sorry.
Come on, child.
Oh, I was just about to say, no, I was just piggybacking off you before you continue. There's an entirely different type of energy that is coming from this entire event than what was coming from New Orleans. It was outcries in New Orleans, and now the atom that we are is a lot more apparent in this particular situation. Everyone is on more so one accord. This time, then there just being a total outcry and a shame of how things were going, taking place before New Orleans. That's it.
Okay. When I say come on, child, you know, sometimes you just have to let your children speak.
I don't know if you meant that in an endearing way just now, but
I
I'm
did.
going to say it in a positive way.
I did. The rest. The reason is exactly. The feel is different. Just like the feel was different for those 9 people who were killed in that church than those kids who were killed in Samuel. The feel was different. The feeling was different from 9 people being killed in the church and individual black males being killed around the country. The feel was different. You would think that if 9 people were killed, you would have gotten far greater reaction than you would for 1 person being killed in those areas. But it was totally different because the feel is different. And I believe the feel is different because there's of righteousness. And what I want to say on the healing is in relationship to what Audrey was talking about with the teachers, right? I've said so many times that the African cannot end racism. It takes the perpetuator to end it. You see? The African can't end it. You can be angry about it. We can talk about it, but you can't end it. I listened to this guy, and one of the things he said in relationship to people talking about Obama should be, the Republicans are saying that he's dividing the country, should be bringing racial healing. Well, first of all, how can he bring racial healing to something he didn't create? If you did to her, then how come I got to do the healing? You know, when you really think about how dumb that is, I didn't own any slave. So the idea of what took place in that classroom, that may have been your only purpose for being there, or at least your major purpose for being there, because now the healing can begin from the perpetuators. And I'm not talking about individuals, I'm talking about the energy of racism that exists. That the energy cannot be transformed unless the desire for that transformation is in the hearts of those who perpetuate it. And the desire for that change comes from the ones who desire for it to be changed. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So the next time you hear somebody talk about the president should be bringing racial healing, understand that's not his responsibility. He didn't, I mean, come on, lynching was not a picnic. That was real. And I don't think black folk lynch black folk.
I'm Polish, okay?
Well, the Polish helped Haiti because they were abandoned by the French.
I know. They didn't pay us.
Yeah, they didn't pay us. Yeah.
They didn't pay us.
So you got citizenship in Haiti?
Did. They changed the Constitution before I got there.
Right. So, but anyway, it's so funny how we get sidetracked on stuff. That's okay. That's okay. We did not pierced the hearts. We did not separate families. So we can't bring that healing. That is the reason we have not seen a change regardless of the legislation that was passed. Steward that. But we didn't see it. If you think about what the things he said, the things he did, and the way he reached out, he understood that if the hearts of men were not changed, who were perpetuating it, if the bull corners were not changed, then nothing else would change. We can't change that. But I think that it gave an opportunity for it to be brought to the forefront and laid in waiting until someone came forth who at one time was on the other side of the divide and began to see it from a spiritual perspective and see that only forgiveness touches the heart of an unforgiven heart. And if you look at what happened with the 9, the reason things changed is because unforgiven hearts were changed. People who didn't care one way or the other about what happened, their hearts were pricked because of the forgiveness. And that's one of the common themes that we heard throughout that whole event, how forgiven the people are. So that's that in itself speaks volumes in terms of forgiveness. And it's hard to wrap your mind around forgiving somebody for boiling someone in a pot of hot grease. You know, that's you know, cutting the baby from the womb of a woman, cutting and letting it dangle while you lynch her. That's hard to wrap your mind around. From a spiritual perspective, it doesn't make it easy, but it makes it easier. You know, it's not. So, regardless of what happened, we have to always be in a posture of forgiveness with the understanding that that's what changes the hearts of those who are unforgiven. One needs to be forgiven. Okay? Anyone else?
You had 2 more.
I'm good.
Oh.
All right.
Okay. All right.